I moved here in the 70s, and well, I moved here, I guess, most permanently in the 70s. My aunt and uncle are Don and Edna Whitman, and I lived in my grandfather's house halfway between here and the library. So, I mean, I'm like, I've had a library card longer than most of you have been alive in Burney. And so, the things that I would tell you is, first of all, I mean, I'm so glad that Mary is here and that you've got Mary who understands this area. You haven't always had the luxury of supervisors from this area, like Dave, Corey, and that's important. And I also want to back Mary. You know, Mary has, if you tell people how you're going to vote before something comes before you as an elected official, you've given up the other side's right to have influence, and so they really frown on that. They want you to listen to all the testimony at a public meeting where everybody gets to hear each other's arguments and then make your case. But Mary knows, and more importantly, because Mary knows about the lending room in Fall River. She knows the difference between the lending libraries that we have all over our county, and they are a great asset. But there's a huge difference between going and picking up a novel, you know, which is great, and the public library system. And so I would urge you, every single one of you, write a note, write an email, keep it brief, but write to all the supervisors. Many of them have lending rooms in their district, but it's important that you say, look, this is a third of the library system. I mean, this is our share of a service that is provided to the members of the county of Shasta. And it's a fairness issue that we have access to all the things that you have with the public library system. Access to overdrive, to, you know, anybody with a smartphone knows, or I hope you all know, you can download books, you know, on your phone. You can download books on your Kindle. You can do all kinds of things. You have access to all the things in the library system in the state of California. And you don't have that with a lending room. It is a huge loss. And especially as someone who lived up here, and in the old days when we drove to beg for library funding, we had to drive on black ice, you know, uphill 40 miles. It was, you know. So I've done that a lot, and I know what a sacrifice that is. And the rest of the supervisors need to know that you are, you know, you are the furthest from the other two county libraries, and you have, it's a fairness issue. They owe you this. The windmills are in your backyard. This money came from the windmills. There was a lot of negotiation. I mean, I remember, you know, the calluses on Evie's knees from talking to everybody about, you know, you need to do something good for our community when you're going to put these windmills right in our view shed. So most of the supervisors, you know, may not have ever been to Burney. A lot of them, unfortunately, may not even have library cards. So, you know, it's important that they know the difference between a public library and a reading room. And again, it will take every one of you and your grandkids and your dog and, you know, your next door neighbor, send them notes. Make them short because they get a lot of mail, but make your points. So anyway, and you know I could just go on and on.
I didn't quite understand what you were saying about 1/3 of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always kind of view this as a third of the county. There are 5 supervisors districts. You probably could straighten me out, but you know, this, you know, in landmass, actually, I think this is about a third of the county, isn't it? Eastern Shasta County. And you certainly are the furthest away. I mean, you know, I know Shasta Lake City for a long time wanted to have a public library. There wasn't funding for that. Now they're incorporated. I mean, they might have some other options, but they also are 10 miles from a county public library. You're not, and so you know that's important to reinforce that this is about fairness, and you are residents of the county, and you know, and also, you know, I remember when we used to be the Friends of the Burney Library, I think, and it was intentionally changed to the Friends of the Intermountain Library because even though Fall River had done this just amazing job of getting a wonderful, I don't even know the right word. I mean, we call them libraries, but this lending, book lending.
Volunteer library.
Volunteer libraries, sorry, I knew there was a real name for them. They also, people in Fall River and MacArthur, people doing research, people doing things like that, they could come to Burney. They didn't have to drive to Reading to have access to all the things that are part of the state of California library system. So, Peggy.
All right. Well, I got involved with the library effort in 2001 with New Library Now, which was the citizen-initiated and citizen-driven effort to raise the local funds required to qualify for state library construction grant money. And so we recognized in that effort that there was a community campaign component and there was a political campaign component, not just applying for and qualifying and receiving the state grant, but also navigating the fact that we had, we're involved with the county and we're involved with the city of Reading, the city of Anderson. And we actually had, some Shasta Lake City involved at that point too. So we did, a couple of things, and I've talked with members of the FOIL board periodically over the last few years kind of about the steps that we took in the actual fundraising piece of it, and I know you've done a lot of that, but from my perspective, it is really, really important to have a grassroots presence, both for the financial involvement of everybody in your community, regardless of their level and their ability to give. Right here, talk to the talking points. But also because that gives you a base to mobilize when you do need to have some political involvement and political awareness of the importance of an issue to a community. So what have we got up here? Some of this has already been addressed, but we really, so we did, coin campaigns in schools. We called it the Giving Tree. It was our donor recognition for the Reading Library that people could get involved with at a lower level. It really became important. The state funding process had 3 cycles. We did not get funded the first round, so we had to revise our application. We did a massive letter writing campaign. Kim referenced that, and that really actually was a turning point for us, and I think in receiving the grant the second time around. We had one of the committee members in Sacramento say that they thought everybody in Shasta County had written to them. So it makes a difference when they feel that there is numbers, and Francie's talked about this. It doesn't have to be a lot, they need to know from a lot of people that this is an important issue and that's where you stand on that issue. We were dealing with, the city of Reading wrote the grant application, the county owned the facility, so there was some negotiations between the two. We've kind of made it even more complicated with our library governance system now, but you're looking at a similar situation where you have to get a community involved behind you and you have to influence your elected officials and get them to see that this is a community issue. So any questions? Or, I think that's the, I know you have done some letter writing. I don't know if you remember, but I think when the county committed the $400,000, Leonard Modi was the one who noted how many people had contacted them. So that is just hugely important, that you have as many people in this community. I mean, and I know it's hard for people to make physical meetings, but they need to make their presence and their opinion known, and emails, phone calls, letters, however you can get people to do that. It is really, really important. And then it gives you that base when you do need to follow up on any issue that you have.
We talked about making contact with the appropriate people. Do we have a list of contact points, either online or paper or anywhere?
For Board of Supervisors? I don't know what you've organized.
It used to be in the paper. There is a list of the Board of Supervisors.
It's online.
It's online,
yeah. Easily available online.
If you look up the Board of Supervisors,
So each listed with their districts in the background.
Okay,
And then you can email them. They just have the, I think
okay,
they all have.
let me clarify, that's our focus, just the Board of Supervisors?
yes, the
Well, at
Shasta
this
County
point-
Board of Supervisors are going to vote. You need 3 of them on your
Yes.
side.
They are our focus. We need 3 out of 5 vote
Ah,
for
so we're
us.
not just pestering Mary.
No. We wish you were on one minute show. No.
Mary's your person, Mary
3
knows.
pros.
And Mary can't advocate before it comes before the board. Today it comes before the board. And, you know, the county courthouse isn't that big a building. I mean, people know whether it's, you know, I mean, they know Mary's from up here and that she's got your back. And most importantly, like I said, because everybody has lending rooms, that Mary knows the difference between a public library and a lending room. And I think if you've got, children, if you've got children that can write, and I'll tell you, it goes a long ways if you're pleasant and maybe just instill a little feel appreciative. Mean reading, mean letters. Get 100 mean letters. It doesn't improve your disposition in making a decision. But
I don't know if this is a question for you, but as
Could
a new
everybody
per-
speak up? We can't hear.
as a new person in the area, I want to know if anyone can tell me what benefit it would be for the youth, even though they have their schools and all, what benefit is it for the youth to have better futures if they have a public library versus a volunteer library?
well, a children's library is she was hungry.
So, let me talk about this a little bit, but one of the main differences I think you guys could all attest to just from your current library situation right now, and not just specifically talking about youth, but just talking about your library situation, is we just did a major broadband network upgrade. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but the internet at the Burney Library is fabulous. This is not something that would be available to a volunteer library. This was state funded. The state library actually put a huge amount of additional dollars towards this, but I also don't know how many of you are familiar with Deb and April, who are our local librarians here in Burney, and we love them so much. But April's actually just instituted a full new round of children's programming. That includes our weekly story time that we've been doing, but she's also adding annual story times, or annual programs. They're coming out in more of a story time form, but we're essentially trying to offer something for the community that's more of a resource for families. We want families to be able to go somewhere in the times where they're not in school and be able to receive some kind of resources that would allow them to entertain their kids, but also to educate themselves or entertain themselves. Maybe they want a moment where they can, have their kid immersed in a craft while they're able to look and browse at some books. I mean, that's a really important resource for parents. And that's what we're finding is that in Shasta County, the main goal and the main want from the community, from what we're hearing from our surveys and everything else, is that they want some place they can take their families. So we want to make a place where kids can really engage in their library. Parents can do their own thing and, browse their own materials while their kids are getting to kind of, entertain themselves. And so we really want to create that space. And that's where in a volunteer library, we have staff that are trained in early childhood education. We have staff that are trained in designing programs that are meant to support parents, to support them in parental mastery, to support them when they're struggling in terms of my kid's having a behavioral issue and I don't know what to do. That's what your librarians are for, and a lot of people don't think about it like that, but that's what our master's degrees are geared towards. Like, that's what we do. So
I was going to add just a couple things.